Hi everyone, it's James here. Welcome to another video. So today I thought I would look at a very famous album which I have mentioned a few times on my channel over the years, but I can't believe I've never done a proper video on it. And it is Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds, which came out in 1978. And a couple of people have been showing this recently on the VC and or talking about it, so I thought now would be a good time to talk about it. So let me show you the gatefold, and this is the inside gatefold, and I'll show you the booklet in a minute. I'm not going to go into the history of the record particularly because I don't want the video to be too long, and I'm not going to talk about my own personal memories of it because I've done that before. I might link to some videos where I've done that. You know, I got this album when it came out, and I was a kid at the time, and I just loved it. You know, I played it constantly. It did end up scaring me in the end. It's quite a scary record, and it still scares me now. You know, I played it the other weekend, and you know, there's still some part of me that wouldn't like to be on my own in a darkened house listening to this record. It kind of awakens certain childhood fears. You know, fear of the dark, fear of what's lurking under the bed. That's what this record does so well. So clearly it was based on the H.G. Wells novel, the story of a Martian attack. So the Martians invade Earth in, I think it's in the Victorian era or maybe the Edwardian era, kind of late 19th century. And they target England, they target London. They come to Earth and create absolute devastation. You know, they come down all guns blazing, and I won't spoil the story if you haven't read the book. It's an absolutely brilliant book. The record stays reasonably close to the book. It does make certain changes. For example, in the book, the main hero is married, and quite near the start of the book he takes his wife to the house of some relatives or friends, and she escapes the country, and he's only reunited with her at the end. In the album version, it's not quite the same. He has this girlfriend, and it's not quite the same, but it does stick pretty closely to the book. It's pretty impressive the way that Jeff Wayne managed to keep all the main plot points kind of, you know, basically there. So let me just run you through how the story unfolds, just in terms of the record itself. So there are four sides of vinyl, and actually just before I do that, let's just whiz through the cast list, because it's got an amazing cast list of people. Richard Burton plays the narrator, really famous Welsh film star obviously. You've got Julie Covington, who was at the time, she'd starred in big musicals, you know, stage musicals. You've got David Essex, who had worked with Jeff Wayne already. Jeff Wayne, just to give some background to Jeff Wayne, he was the guy who'd produced the early hits of David Essex. You know, he'd produced Rock On, and he'd done various things with David Essex. So he cast David Essex on the record, playing the part of the artilleryman. And we'll discuss that in a minute. Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues is on side 2. You've got an absolutely show-stopping performance from Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy, who just really he turns in the performance of his life on this record. You know, absolutely no exaggeration. Then you've got Joe Partridge, who was quite a well-known session guitarist who was around in London at the time, and Chris Thompson, who had served as a lead singer for a while in Manfred Mann's Earth Band. So that's the cast, and the record essentially it's a mixture of spoken word and music. There's a lot of music on the record. You know, don't think that this is a kind of radio play. It's nothing like that at all. The story, I'd say, it's kind of mainly told in music. It's probably about, I don't know, maybe 70% music, 30% talking, but most of the talking happens with music playing underneath it. So essentially it's a musical experience. You know, when you listen to the record, it doesn't feel like you're listening to a radio play. It definitely feels like you're listening to a musical album. And the music is this amazing combination of progressive rock mixed with disco. I can't think of a better description. It came out in 1978. Quite a few of the tracks on it have a disco beat. There's, disco bass lines, disco drums, and just a certain disco feel prevails through lots of the record. But don't think that it's a disco album, because you've also got the progressive rock side, and you've got a lot of absolute classic prog rock signifiers, shall we say, synth sounds that you'd know from Genesis albums and Yes records, and guitar solos straight out of the realms of whatever kind of Steve Howe, Steve Hackett kind of pyrotechnics. So it's a really clever record, because in 1978, prog rock had not been washed away. It was still around, and disco was still big. So it manages to do that absolutely brilliantly. And I suppose the third aspect of the music is the orchestral side, is the classical side. Jeff Wayne's approach was basically to compose, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 main themes. And these themes come back and they keep reoccurring in different guises and different arrangements, So there'll be a bass line which comes in and there's a certain piece of music over it, but then later on you hear the bass line again, but there's a different piece of music over it, and the riffs come in and come out, and it's very difficult to describe. But if you think of it as being, broadly speaking, symphonic, so the tunes and the melodies and the ideas keep returning, and he'll use themes or motifs to set up certain moments on the record, and then they'll come back later on and they will remind you of the earlier episode, shall we say. And one big thing about this record, which really struck me again listening to it, was just the emotional range of it. Yes, it has its cheesy moments, but there's a kind of emotional intensity to it, particularly on side 3, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it's just, I think that's what gives it its longevity. And when I was a kid, I used to listen to it all the way through, and I would want to listen to it again, but you couldn't do it. It was too much. It was sort of cathartic. You'd have to wait a couple of days and then listen to it again. But you wanted to listen to it again. It wasn't just a stupid sci-fi story. There was an emotional arc there, emotional experiences. So when you listen to the record, you'd feel like you lived through this adventure, and you'd feel like you'd identified with the characters in the story. Because of the way their stories are told through music, you've got this very rich, emotional kind of musical journey happening. So the story essentially, side 1 of the record is the coming of the Martian. So it tells the story of the first Martian cylinder, which lands from Mars. It lands on Horsell Common in the southeast of England. It's quite funny. It's all in that kind of neck of the woods down south where kind of George Harrison had his mansion in the early 1970s. It's all set in this very small kind of area of England, this quite kind of well-to-do area. And the Martians land, the cylinder unscrews, and the Martians come out and they attack with their heat ray, and there's lots of death and carnage. That's mainly the story of side 1 of the record, but there's a brilliant kind of prologue where the astronomer can see the green gas coming from Mars, and there's a brilliant theme there sung by Justin Hayward where the words are, "The chances of anything coming from Mars are 1,000,000 to 1, he said. The chances of anything coming from Mars are 1,000,000 to 1, but still they come." Really scary stuff, Side 1 has 2 or 3 main themes. You've got the main big orchestral theme, which is almost like a kind of piece of Beethoven. It's, da 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 da. It's so dramatic. Then you've got this real kind of scary, kind of Martian, alien kind of sound. Dee-doo, dee-doo, dee-doo. That's really, really scary. That used to absolutely, I used to be, quivering under the mattress to that. And you've got the heat ray theme as well, which is pretty good. Lots of great kind of electric guitar and bass work, and some fantastic sort of swooping synths. So that's side 1. Side 2, basically, so the main character, he teams up with this young soldier, this artilleryman, and they try and travel to London, and they encounter, by this time the Martians have built these incredible, huge fighting machines, these tripods, which can kind of stride over buildings, and they're pumping out black smoke, and they've got the heat ray and everything. And essentially, side 2 is the story of the Martians attacking London. So let's just backtrack, and I'll show you I did actually show you already So the picture that really accompanies side 1 is the cylinder arriving on Horsell Common. So beautifully done paintings by this artist, Peter Goodfellow, you know, fantastic. And then when the Martians attack London on side 2, you get this amazing scene. And I used to stare at this when I was a kid, just the fear and the terror on the faces of the people, and just the level of detail there, you know, people falling over in the street. And it's just so haunting, the way that the tripod is there, just blasting into the side of the building, and all these buildings are kind of falling, and you know they're going to fall on the people. The end of side 2, they try and send a kind of ship against the Martians. There's a kind of Victorian battleship called the Thunderchild, which makes a valiant attempt to destroy one of the Martian tripods, but in turn it's just completely torched and destroyed, you know, and that's the famous cover of the record. So by the end of side 2, I think side 2 ends with him saying the Earth belonged to the Martians. So, you know, side 1 is the coming of the Martians, side 2 is the Martians just basically kicking ass and, you know, destroying everything and killing everybody. And then side 3 is called, I think it's called the Earth Under the Martians. And when side 3 opens, we become aware that the world has started to become engulfed in this red weed, which is this kind of red plant-like substance, which is native to the planet Mars, and it's now started to colonise the Earth. And side 3 is beautiful. It's beautiful in a really chilling way. The red weed theme is really haunting. It really gets under your skin. There's this kind of aura of tragedy that completely comes through the music. You know, it's quite emotional. Actually, I completely forgot to mention, side 2 of the record contains the song Forever Autumn, which is sung by Justin Hayward. And that's the moment in the record where the hero realises that his girlfriend is basically gone and he can't find her. And that's the first real kind of emotional kick on the record. Forever Autumn on side 2, that's the real kind of first kind of tear-jerking moment on the record. But then side 3 just has this amazing journey where the protagonist is wandering through these fields of red wheat, and the sky is red and everything's very strange and alien, and there's just this beautiful theme, which is, it's a mixture of synths and orchestral stuff, you know. But then he basically stumbles into the path of this young parson. In the book he's called a curate, you know, like a vicar. And this guy's mind is cracked, basically, and he thinks that the Martians are demons and that they've come to Earth in order to punish us for our sins. And I'll show you the picture. There he is there with his cross. You know, he thinks he can kind of hold the crucifix up and destroy the Martians. And on the record, it's not quite the same as in the book. On the record, Jeff Wayne creates the character of his wife, Beth, played by Julie Covington. And side 3 is basically a song, a big long song sung by Phil Lynott and Julie Covington, and it is just amazing. The Phil Lynott character is just absolutely convinced that, you know, the Earth is finished, God is basically punishing us, we're all going to go to hell, and there's no hope at all. And his wife Beth keeps coming back at him, saying, no, you know, there must be something worth living for. And the song is called The Spirit of Man. Side 3 does pack a real emotional punch, and part of that is to do with Phil Lynott. He just has this amazing kind of unhinged persona. I think he turns in the vocal performance of his life. You know, it's truly extraordinary. And so then various other things happen. I've already done a couple of spoilers, so I don't want to give any more spoilers. But essentially, side 3 ends, and the protagonist has moved on again, and he encounters the artilleryman again, played by David Essex. And most of side 4 of the album, Before the Dénouement, is David Essex's big song, which is basically, you know, he's concocted this amazing idea, which is completely deranged, that humans are now going to live underground instead, and he's going to build this incredible underground world for the humans to live in. And most of the song is just him having this incredible utopian vision of man just living under the ground, while the Martians are still on the surface, controlling the planet. And that basically that leads out into the final stage of the story, where the hero returns to London. And I won't spoil what happens, you might know what happens already, but this is the picture that accompanies the final stage of the journey in London. And then there's a kind of sting in the tail to the record, which again I won't spoil it if you haven't heard it, but there's a kind of cliffhanger at the end, which is really, really good. It's really it's just really chilling, And like I said, the music is truly spectacular. You listen to it and you think, how did he come up with all these different themes? So many memorable hooks, so many themes, different parts of the story are brought to life with different musical motifs and tunes, and the way he kind of weaves them all together. It's very, very compulsive. Also, the Martian's war cry, this great kind of ooh-la kind of noise which they make, which is treated heavily using a kind of electronic effect, is truly, it's terrifying. I still find it quite scary. And I think these things, they kind of go back into your childhood. If you've been scared by something, then you end up still feeling scared by it. I'm sure if you heard it today, not heard it, when you were young, it wouldn't be as scary. But it still packs a punch, I think. It's great. I just love it. I just think it's one of the great all-time musical artifacts from the 1970s and beyond, really. It would definitely feature in a list of my favourite albums of all time. And the stage version, which has been doing the rounds now for a few years, is mind-blowing. If you get a chance to see it, if we ever emerge from COVID lockdown, go and see it, because he has one of these things kind of standing over the audience's head all the way through, and there's a heat ray that comes out of it, and yeah, it's pretty awe-inspiring. And just to hear the music done live with a big orchestra and all the musicians, yeah, it's fantastic. So there we go, that's my little review retrospective on Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave some comments below. Do you know this record? Do you not know it? What do you think of it? Do you plan to get it? And yeah, I'd love to hear your stories. And thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.